It's January 30th. The anniversary of Gandhi's assassination back in 1948.
Right. Yeah.
And it got me thinking about, you think he'd be this huge figure celebrated in Pakistan too, given all his work to protect Muslims during partition.
Yeah, you think so.
But his legacy there...
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated.
To say the least.
Yeah.
It really is a fascinating paradox when you think about it.
Yeah.
And, that's actually what this Pakistani lawyer is trying to work through in this opinion piece we're looking at today.
Okay.
He's really trying to understand why Gandhi's legacy is...
So we're not just...
Looking back, are we?
Yeah.
We're looking at how it applies to today.
Exactly.
Okay.
He wants us to look at 3 of Gandhi's big ideas, I think.
Okay.
His ideas about diversity in economics and resistance.
Resistant.
And ask if they still hold up today.
I like it.
In our world today.
Okay.
And it's important to remember that even back then, in Gandhi's own time,
these ideas, they weren't
simple.
universally loved.
Yeah.
A lot of thinkers like Ambedkar and Tagore challenged a lot of his core beliefs.
Right. So this isn't about like a perfect figure.
No.
This is about...
We're going to unpack some difficult ideas.
Man, that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive in.
Okay.
Let's start with this idea of radical diversity.
Okay.
So Gandhi thought that assimilation was like fundamental to Indian identity.
Right.
And he really pushed for this coexistence of all these different religions and cultures. Kind of like how it was in pre-colonial India.
Right.
But how did he actually define, like, assimilation? It feels like a loaded word today.
It is a loaded word today, for sure. He used it differently than how we think of it now.
Okay.
So for Gandhi, assimilation wasn't about, wiping out differences or making everyone conform.
Like everyone be the same.
Yeah. He imagined a society where diverse communities could keep their own unique identities.
Okay.
But also contribute to this shared sense of Indianness.
Okay.
So
not uniformity.
Think of it like a tapestry.
But unity.
A really vibrant tapestry with all these different threads.
Yeah.
Each one distinct, but they're all woven together to create this cohesive whole.
So unity and diversity, not uniformity.
Exactly.
But how did he imagine that working in pre-1947 India? I mean, it was a place already full of differences and tensions.
That's what's even more interesting.
Right.
Gandhi knew how complicated pre-partition India was.
Yeah.
He said that we need to look to those shared spiritual and ethical values that you find across different religions.
Okay.
And that could be like the bedrock.
That's foundation.
Foundation of the shared political morality.
So he was looking for that common thread across all those different spiritualities.
Exactly. To kind of guide political life.
Which is pretty different from how a lot of governments operate today, which is much more secular.
Yeah, much more secular.
Those two approaches can work together.
That is such a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us to, I think, a really important challenge that modern societies have to figure out.
Okay.
How do we deal with all these really strongly held beliefs in a world that's becoming more and more pluralistic?
Yeah.
I mean, do we try to have a totally secular public sphere?
Right.
Or is there a way to acknowledge how religion and spirituality shape our values?
Yeah.
And then by extension, our politics.
Right. And that leads us right into Gandhi's views on economics.
Yeah, it does.
He was really, really wary of Western-style industrial growth.
Yes, he was.
He saw it as this path towards
inequality
and environmental destruction.
He was way ahead of his time on that one.
Yeah.
This is the early 20th century, way before climate change was on everyone's mind.
Right.
I think to really get him, we have to think about his experiences with colonialism and early industrial capitalism.
Yeah.
He saw how those systems exploited people and the planet, all for profit.
So his critique wasn't just theoretical, it was from what he had seen.
It was very real for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was his alternative?
Well, Gandhi really believed in localized village economies.
Okay.
Based on self-sufficiency, cooperation, and simple living.
Simple living.
He thought by scaling back production and consumption, by making local needs a priority, and by building community, India could have a more just and sustainable way of life.
It sounds almost utopian.
Yeah. It does a bit, doesn't it?
And even back then, people like Tagore,
right,
they criticized him for just rejecting the West. and not looking at the good things that could come from modernization, being connected with the rest of the world.
It's almost like the first rumblings of the globalization debate, isn't it?
Local versus global. Yeah.
Do we focus on self-sufficiency and sustainability in smaller communities? Or do we go for the efficiency and connection of a global economy?
Right. Yeah.
Gandhi obviously was all about the local.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is now with climate crisis and all the resource depletion, all the inequality,
all coming back.
Some of his ideas about local economies are making sense to people again.
It's like we've come full circle.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about Gandhi's commitment to nonviolent resistance.
Okay.
He wasn't just a pacifist.
Right.
He saw nonviolence as like a real strategy, a powerful way to dismantle these oppressive systems, especially colonial rule.
Yeah, he really understood the power dynamics going on.
Right.
He knew that European colonialism often justified itself as this like civilizing mission.
Right, right.
And by meeting violence with steadfast nonviolence, he showed everyone how hypocritical that claim was.
Right, on a global stage.
It wasn't about being passive. It was a strategy.
A calculated strategy.
To take away the moral high ground that the oppressor thought they had.
I mean, one of the best examples is the Salt March in 1930.
Oh, absolutely.
Gandhi leading thousands of Indians, 240 miles to make salt, just to defy British law.
That was huge.
It wasn't just symbolic, it had real consequences.
He did.
Economic and political. Yeah, economic and political. But how did he convince so many people to take this path of nonviolent resistance?
I think that's where his deep understanding of Indian culture and spirituality really comes in.
Okay.
He used those ancient traditions of nonviolence.
Okay.
And presented it not just as a political tactic,
but
as like a moral obligation. He also understood the power of collective action.
Yeah.
And the importance of building a mass movement.
So the Salt March wasn't just a march.
No.
It was a
really well-planned campaign
Yeah.
of civil disobedience.
that the whole world saw.
Yeah.
And that put so much pressure on the British government.
Exactly.
But was that approach always effective?
That's a good question.
Did it work for everybody?
That's what we'll look at next.
Yeah, I mean, Gandhi's Salt March, it really shows what nonviolent resistance can do.
Yeah.
Like any strategy, it has limits, yeah.
Yeah, you need someone to be listening.
Yeah. Critics like Arundhati Roy say that it only really works if you have the right audience. Someone who's going to be moved by what you're doing.
Moved by the
moral force of your action.
Right. What happens when the people in power just don't care?
Yeah.
Or what about when the violence is so bad that peaceful protest just seems
pointless? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really complicated. Roy points out that for a lot of marginalized groups, the ones whose suffering is ignored, they can't just appeal to a wider audience. It might not even be an option.
It's about survival.
For them, it's about survival.
Right now.
And that might mean
different tactics,
different ways of resisting.
So it's not one size fits all.
No, not at all.
Nonviolent resistance can be super powerful.
Yeah.
But it's not always practical or even possible.
Exactly.
Even with those limits, Gandhi's message, it spread all over the world.
It did.
Think about Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, yeah.
He saw Gandhi's philosophy as like the only way.
The only moral and practical way.
To fight for civil rights?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
King really understood how powerful Gandhi's approach was.
Right.
Especially in the American South.
Yeah.
He saw how nonviolent resistance could expose how brutal segregation and Jim Crow laws were.
Force the U.S. to look in the mirror.
And it would force the nation to confront his own hypocrisy.
It's amazing how Gandhi's ideas, which came out of the Indian independence movement, could be so powerful for activists fighting for racial justice.
Totally different context.
In a totally different place. It shows how universal some of these principles are.
Yeah.
That even when you're up against huge power,
there's strength.
There's strength in not fighting violence with violence.
Exactly.
That you can actually change these oppressive systems by appealing to our shared humanity.
Yeah.
Even if it takes a long time.
Even if it's hard. A powerful message.
A long road.
Yeah.
It's a powerful message.
And it's one that still resonates today.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the climate strikes.
Read by
all over the world.
Young people all over the world.
Yeah, they're using nonviolent tactics.
Yeah.
to demand action on climate change.
Yeah, they're holding the powerful accountable.
They are.
For doing nothing.
For their inaction, yeah.
And think of the movements.
All the movement.
Social justice.
Social justice.
The calls for peace in conflict zones. They all
connected.
Take inspiration from Gandhi's legacy.
Whether they
realize it or not.
Know it or not.
Yeah, it's like his philosophy has become part of modern activism.
Yeah.
It's a way to fight injustice without using violence.
It's about understanding the context.
Right.
The nuances. Recognizing that there's no one right way to resist.
Yeah.
Gandhi's philosophy gives us principles that we can adapt and apply in all kinds of situations.
And that brings us back to this Pakistani lawyer.
Yeah, it does. His call for
Pakistan to really grapple with Gandhi's ideas.
Yeah, even the tough ones.
The challenging ones, yeah.
He thinks it's essential for Pakistan to build a national identity.
Rooted in
based on diversity.
Diversity, sustainability, and nonviolence.
Do you think that's possible?
It's a tough one.
I mean, can a nation really embrace those ideals?
Right.
While also dealing with all the historical and political baggage?
It's a lot to ask.
It is.
But I think it's worth trying for.
Yeah.
I think Gandhi's legacy,
as complex as it is,
as complex and controversial as it is,
it gives us a roadmap for the 21st century.
A roadmap.
He makes us rethink everything.
Yeah.
From diversity and inclusion to economic models to how we deal with conflict.
He really makes us think, doesn't he?
He does.
He reminds us that if we want a more just and equal world, we have to face some hard truths.
Right.
We have to question what we think we know.
Yeah.
And be open to changing our minds.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it.
Right.
Gandhi's legacy isn't about easy answers or simple solutions.
Yeah.
It's about starting a conversation.
Yeah.
It's about getting us to think critically about the world.
Yeah.
About the role we play in shaping it.
And so as we remember his assassination, it's a powerful reminder.
It is.
That his life and his work, even though they came from a specific time and place, they still matter to us today.
They do.
They offer a guide.
Yeah.
Not a
strict one?
Strict one, but like a framework for dealing with how complex our world is.
Right. And working towards a better future.
A more just sustainable, peaceful future.
Yeah.
His legacy shows how powerful ideas can be.
Yeah.
How they can go beyond borders. Inspire people for generations.
Yeah.
And shape history.
Even after we're gone.
Long after we're gone.
It's a reminder that even when things seem impossible, the human spirit,
guided by truth, compassion, and nonviolence, can make real change.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just talking about Gandhi as a historical figure.
Right.
We're wrestling with his ideas.
And how they still matter today.
Yeah, in a
world that's
dealing with
so many of the same problems.
The same problems he faced.
He faced,
So as we wrap up,
we
want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What can we learn from Gandhi that can help us deal with the problems we face today?
Yeah. How can we use his principles?
How can we use his principles of diversity,
sustainability, and nonviolence to make a better world?
It's a question worth thinking about.
Yeah.
A conversation worth having.
Thanks for joining us. So we've been talking about some really big ideas.
We have.
Radical diversity, localized economies.
Yeah.
The whole idea of nonviolent resistance.
That's a lot to think about.
It is a lot.
It really shows how complex Gandhi's legacy is.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a political leader or an activist.
Right.
He was a philosopher.
A real thinker.
Yeah, he thought about human nature and how societies work.
And what progress even means.
Yeah, like what does it all mean?
And that's why he's still so relevant.
I think so.
Even today.
Yeah.
His ideas make us look at those same big questions again.
Right.
Like how we organize ourselves.
Yeah.
How we treat each other.
How we build our societies.
Yeah.
Exactly. He challenges us to think beyond just the here and now.
Beyond just
what's practical.
Right.
And to think about the long-term consequences of our choices.
Yeah. Both as individuals and as a society.
Yeah, as a whole.
So it's not just about taking Gandhi's answers and using them directly.
Yep.
It's about using his way of thinking to solve the problems we face today.
Exactly. It's about being curious, questioning things,
not accepting the status quo,
and trying new things,
being open to new approaches.
Right.
And it takes us back to that Pakistani lawyer.
Yeah.
And his hope that Pakistan will really engage with Gandhi's ideas.
Yeah.
Even the ones that are hard to accept.
I think it shows how universal Gandhi's message is.
Right. It's not just for India.
No. His ideas go beyond borders and time periods.
Yeah.
They're a guide.
Okay.
Not a set of rules, but like principles.
Yeah.
For any society that wants a better future.
A more just
equitable, sustainable future.
But like we've said, there are no easy answers.
No.
If we want to use Gandhi's principles today, we have to be thoughtful.
We have to adapt them.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with how connected everything is in our world.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
So as we finish up this deep dive into Gandhi's relevance, I think we have more questions than answers.
Maybe that's the point.
Maybe that is the point.
Gandhi's legacy isn't about giving us all the solutions.
Yeah.
It's about starting conversations.
Right.
It's about making us think and imagine.
Yeah.
And encouraging us to keep looking for a better way.
It's about understanding that making the world fairer, it's not a one-time thing.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. Yeah.
Never ends.
You have to keep looking at yourself.
Right.
And adapting and challenging your own ideas.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from Gandhi.
The biggest lesson from Gandhi.
The power of ideas.
Yeah.
They can go beyond anything.
Time and space.
Inspire people for generations.
And they can keep shaping history.
Even after we're gone.
Long after we're gone.
Yeah, that's what makes his legacy so powerful.
So here's what we want you to think about.
Okay, what can we learn from Gandhi?
That can help us
deal with the problems we face today.
Yeah, how can we use his principles?
Diversity.
Sustainability to build a better world.
It's a question.
Yeah, worth thinking about.
Yeah, it's worth thinking about.
It's a conversation worth having.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.